John Wooden, TED video. Coach Wooden was generous throughout his career, but particularly in his retirement years, as well as philosophical in his thoughts, as I hope you are able to appreciate after viewing the TED video. As you participate in the discussion board around the Pyramid of Success and the TED video, I know you will find other aspects of what he had to say to be thought-provoking. You may think, yes, that is a part of leadership and is something I can take away to apply to my own approach. I hope you will make your points on the board and engage with your colleagues in what they too think are important points that may or may not differ from your own point of view. From this lecture, your interpretation of the TED video, the pyramid and the leadership points and the thoughts you share and kick around, I'm hoping you will begin to understand the technical theories of leadership. Later in the course, we will explore some of these theories and you will learn what part or parts fit your personality. In addition, you will complete leadership inventories, quizzes for each theory study. This will equip you with the tools you will use to figure out where your style of leadership fits in the academic considerations of leadership. The Pyramid of Success will too be a tool you can use as you construct, discuss, and enact your mentoring plan. Wooden's down-to-earth, plain-spoken insights should be an example of how you can practically apply the theories and other insights you've gained from the previous as well as coming discussions, putting it all into a mix of information to help you in the future. As stated in the video, John Wooden's definition of success is peace of mind attained only through self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to do the best that of which you are capable. I think this can guide each of us to know we can be an effective leader as long as we are just doing our best, whatever that is. Within each of us, there are skills that can be assets to an organization, while it's not imperative to be a master of all. When, after you've done what you can as a leader, you believe you have given it your all, whether you succeed, fail, or some mix of the two, you can be proud of your effort and accept the outcomes. In the boardroom, I never won all the battles, but represented my opinions in the strongest of terms to try to make my positions known to the board, just like the rest of the board members did. And although I didn't win them all, when it was over, I could be satisfied that I had made the effort to do the best that I was capable of. Like in athletics, it seems that I remember the failed efforts more vividly than the wins. One episode in particular comes to mind. There was a presentation, ironically enough, on graduate athletic training education with which I took issue. I fought hard to not accept the proposal as it was presented. It was brought to the board by a very well-known educator who was respected by all, including me, for his many contributions in the academic arena. I argued strongly against accepting the proposal, was heard by the board and the presenter, but in the end, the board adopted his proposal 6-4. When it was over, I went up to him and I said the board had spoken, my side had not prevailed, and now I was 100% behind the proposal. Win or lose, when the decision is made, it's made, and all parties have to move on. It can be hard, but to be an effective and respected leader, you have to accept the will of the other leaders in your group. True to my word, I never said a negative thing about the plan or the decision that was made, and from that point on, I supported it. Another video point that hit home for me is that as a leader, you should never try to be better than someone else. A good leader is the best he or she can be. When leaders try to outdo someone else, I think they lose their focus and in turn, their effectiveness. Coach Wooden also said, always try to learn from others. How true is this to becoming good at anything you do? This is why mentors are so important. I think you heard from the past presidents how we all had mentors who showed us the path to being good athletic trainers and effective leaders, however you define that. A good leader latches onto good mentors, watches, and learns. NATA does a great job at this as they allow incoming board members to sit in for nearly a year of board meetings and calls in order to learn how the board operates. But what it provided for me, frankly, was the opportunity to look at the board dynamics. Who held the room when they spoke? Who the rest of the board turned to when they wanted to learn about an issue? Who, as it were, would be my board mentors as I joined the group? I think it was equally important for me to figure out the board members with whom I didn't mesh, whether it be that their approach was too gruff or they appeared unprepared. Those, in other words, whom I did not want to model. It was great to be in the room and not to have to say a word, have a vote, or take a stand for a year. It gave me the freedom to learn the mechanics before I had to help drive the machine. Here's some final points from the video that really hit home for me and spoke to effective leadership. A real pet peeve of mine is that I am never late, and it didn't surprise me that this was a rule for Coach Wooden. I tell every student who works in the clinic that I won't judge their skills as an athletic trainer because it's my job to help them develop them in the clinical environment. I will let them practice what they learn and only speak up when there's a teaching moment. But the one thing I cannot tolerate, and the one thing everyone can do without exception, is that they should never be late. For me, it speaks to a person's desire to be there. In the boardroom, it wasn't that there was a competition, but I was always the first in the room, first as a board member, and remained the first one in the room after being elected president. I always try to get places early, and it drives my wife crazy. She is always on time, but for me, being on time means being early, and she sometimes just doesn't get that. In the workplace and in volunteer leadership, being on time means you want to be there and tells everyone around you that you lead by example by being prompt and prepared. Never be late. His players had to be neat and clean. This is another philosophy that is deeper than just neat and clean. By being neat and clean, you demonstrate to those you lead that you care enough about what you're doing that you want to put your best foot forward, and this begins with the professional appearance. President Mark Smaha, during his presidency, caught a lot of heat from the membership by simply asking us to dress professionally at meetings and in places where we were representing NATA and the profession. This doesn't seem like much to ask, does it? Well, it was in the 1980s. Many of the members, young and old, were accustomed to shorts and a t-shirt for work and for meetings, and it didn't represent us well to the public or those we served. It created a stir that made him a lightning rod for many established athletic trainers who just didn't get it. This again demonstrates leadership. Mark took a position that was hugely unpopular, unwelcomed, and greeted hostilely and stood by it because it was the right thing to do. As you attend meetings today, you will see some of our colleagues who may not dress as professionally as they should, but the vast majority of us now do present ourselves professionally. That's because one person stood up and said we needed to change. As an aside, and another example of how to be neat and clean, Pinky Newell and his successor at Purdue, another past president, Denny Miller, were never on a sideline that they didn't wear a tie. This took it further than I did in my khakis and staff shirt, but it did set an example of being neat and clean, even in the workplace. Although I didn't do it, I wouldn't argue against it. Another friend of mine and someone with whom I served on the board with, Rod Walters, always had a tie on when he was on the sideline as the head athletic trainer at the University of South Carolina. They, indeed, always looked neat and trim as they represented athletic trainers in the best way. Another good rule from Coach Wooden that I believe applies to effective leadership is that you should never criticize a teammate. This, of course, applies to your coworkers, your supervisor, and those with whom you share a leadership role. In the end, and I think this was Wooden's point, it doesn't hurt them, but rather undermines your credibility, draining your ability to lead. It isn't productive, and good doesn't come from criticizing a teammate. I would even go further and suggest that it isn't productive to let those around you criticize a teammate. Something that has already been brought up but bears repeating from Coach Wooden is that there is no progress without change. Leaders are change agents, not change for the sake of change, but change for the sake of progress. Advocating professional dress by Mark Smaha was not earth-shaking, but it was change, and it was progress. Starting certification for athletic trainers around 1970 was critical to establishing athletic training as a legitimate profession and assuring the world we could do what we said we could. It, too, was change that, as hard as it is to believe today, was not universally welcomed by the members who thought we worked in silos and no one cared about what we did. That change was progress, and those who advocated it are to be credited with all the progress we've enjoyed since then. As a leader for the future, there will be change that must take place. And what you have to decide is, are you going to play a part in driving the change? Are you just going to go along for the ride? Or worse yet, are you going to resist the change? The final point from the video that struck me as true and worth using in leadership was the advice Coach Wooden got from his father. Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. Just get out there and do it to the best of your abilities. Leaders take whatever job they are given and do it to the best of their abilities. No one is immune from being given a job they don't like or think is beneath them. Those you mentor will watch you and judge you based on your actions. In the athletic training room, do you clean the whirlpools, wipe down the tables, or do you just take care of the quarterback? In leadership roles, do you only educate yourself on the big issues, or are you willing to contribute on the other things that a leader does? As president at the convention every year, I would go to the staging area where the 100 or more volunteers were putting together the bags you get when you check in at registration. Those items just don't fly into the bags. Hands touch every brochure, Kramer button, book, or t-shirt. To me, as a leader, it was important to go in that room, thank the volunteers, and pitch in even if it was just for a few minutes. It may be tired and overused, but leaders and mentors lead by example, not by decree. Thank you.